Hello everybody, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in your conference. My name's Dorothy Fraser, I am a Scottish physiotherapist and I work on collaborative AAC projects requested by European countries. The topic I've chosen for this conference is Props for Storytelling and Creating Stories, Promoting Interaction Opportunities for Children with and Without Disabilities. This website, aacscotland.org.uk, is a source of information from AAC and assistive technology specialists with sections on AAC modules, AAC videos and web links, AAC downloads, AAC courses and events. Some of the AAC and AT specialists collaborate with the Scottish Government on projects, and I'm sharing this quote because I feel it's very relevant to the topic that I'm discussing today. Principles of inclusive communication, an information and self-assessment tool for public authorities. And the quote is, communication access and physical access are equally important. Some of the problems for children with disabilities: they may have difficulty with physical handling of books. Adult may become the dominant person in the story reading process. The child may also not choose the book. The child may have problems concentrating on the story. The child may understand the spoken word but may have difficulty understanding the storyline. The aim of props is to enable children with severe communication difficulties or other disabilities to have similar opportunities as children without disabilities to enjoy stories, to increase the literacy experience and improve skills, for example, turn taking, focusing on an activity, anticipating and sequencing. The use of props can provide opportunities, for example, to listen to and respond to stories, songs and poems, to enjoy listening to and using spoken and written language, to understand the elements of stories, for example, the main characters and sequence of events, to retell narratives in the correct sequence, to make their own stories. In Edinburgh, Scotland, we have an AAC-AT centre called KeyCom, and one of their projects is StoryBags. StoryBags are about sharing stories and giving information and opportunities for children to become active participants in the storytelling process. And I put a link here to a guide to using KeyCom StoryBags. They have a lending library, so the first photograph shows a selection of story bags, which are the size of a pillowcase, a drawstring bag, and then what goes in the bag. And depending on the story and also the level of ability of the children that are involved, what goes in the bag may be a mat, some symbols, some characters related to the story, the book, or a simplified version of the book, and elements that will attract interaction with the story, and also some symbols about the book, and it can be turn the page, want more, stop, etc. Using communication boards during reading activities is strongly recommended. This facilitates children's participation in the activity by indicating, for example, turn the page, more or finished. And this example has got I want more, read, that's silly, where, book, sad, look, turn page and finished. You can set up the story props as a hands-on sensory experience that goes beyond just the words of the story and invites creative thinking, gross and fine motor play and tactile stimulation. This is an example from a special needs school in Bucharest that I worked with and still have connections with. And I provided some small puppets, and me and the speech therapist worked together. A small collection of props helps to give the story life, to stimulate imagination and interest while making sure the story is meaningful and fun. And she chose the story of the three little pigs and was telling a familiar story with this girl who has autism. So she had symbols, she had the little puppets that really interested her, and the two of them talked through the story together and laid it out in sequence on the mats, with the final part of blowing, with the wolf blowing and her blowing as well. Widget symbol health chart showing emotions was translated by Assist Foundation, and it's free to download from Widget Health website, along with many other Widget Health symbols translated by Assist Foundation. I've chosen this chart, which is actually part of the Child Day Case Operation Post-op chart, because it shows emotions and feelings, and that's something that we like to discuss when we're talking with stories and the pleasure of stories. How do I feel? How do you feel? Or how do the characters feel, etc. And this example is from a psychologist that I was working with in Bucharest, and she had a group of children. They were telling the story of Little Red Riding Hood, which the children were familiar with, and one of the children was having a traumatized time in his life, being bullied, and he was given the role of the hunter. And what he said at the end of the story was that he felt proud. So I've included the symbol for proud from the Widget Healthcare symbols to let you see that it's also translated in Bulgarian and available to use as you wish within stories. Puppets in schools, and this is just some general information. Puppets can be used to connect curriculum topics and activities. For example, colour and shape, numbers, memory, sequencing, language and literacy. And puppets can be used in the 6 areas of learning and development: personal, social and emotional development, communication, language and literacy, problem solving, reasoning and numeracy, knowledge and understanding of the world, and physical development, creative development. This next section demonstrates examples from my training projects in several European countries. Some are new to AEC and others where AEC is more developed. And for further information, please refer to my handout, which accompanies this PowerPoint. And the handout is called Instruction Manual, Making and Using Puppet Characters and Pop-up Cards, Books, and Books with Movable Parts for children, parents, families, therapists, and teachers. In Sibiu in Romania, I had a lot of projects with the Teacher Training Centre, and one was based on Romanian Ministry of Education project, The Pleasure of Stories, to support the development of literacy. We made workshops for teachers and therapists in mainstream and special education to apply in their workplace, and it was accredited by School Inspectorate. Some of the school inspectors came on the workshops too, and had an evaluation form for outcomes. And this is the evaluation form from the Teacher Training Centre for the people who participated. Teachers should observe changes in some of the following in class activities and in individual pupils: interest in learning, creative thinking and imagination, awareness of others, self-confidence, communication skills, listening skills including attention span, problem solving, manual dexterity. And for the project, I chose recycled material, which I will explain after this slide. So we were using recycled material to make puppets for traditional stories and to create stories, starting with characters from a familiar story which the teachers chose: Little Red Riding Hood and the wolf. And the wolf in the story has big eyes, big ears and big teeth. Awareness of reuse and recycling material. Globally, there's a growing awareness of the importance of conserving the world's natural resources for future generations. People are being encouraged to save and recycle everyday domestic waste materials, for example, paper, cards, cloth and plastics. And the introduction to recycling material for creative arts aims are to stimulate children's imagination and extend their skills, have fun, and think before putting recyclable material in the rubbish bin. To recycle items we normally throw away into creations and get into the habit of having less rubbish. To encourage children's awareness of the importance of conserving the world's natural resources for future generations. And the benefits. Collecting recycled material and creating your own art is a fun, exciting activity. The material is free, you don't have to worry about making a mistake. And enjoy being creative, and remember, you're also helping to save the earth, save the planet. Children can make their own puppet characters using their imagination. Some children may need assistance from an adult, and that's the same in any of the projects, depending on the child's ability and the child's requirements. A 250ml or 500ml bottle is a good size for a child to hold. And that's one of my references to being a physiotherapist, where I think about access, physical access. These children were in a rural school and they made their own puppets based on information from their teacher who'd attended my workshops. Another example is making animal puppets from boxes, creating characters with mouths to encourage storytelling. And these are made with two same-sized boxes. As you can see, the little boy is holding two boxes that are tea bag boxes, and the therapist is holding larger boxes. At the time of making these puppets, zebras were very popular with children, so a lot of the teachers prepared zebras at different sizes of their own choice. Animal shapes plus a tube for fingers or handhold. The projects initially were for teachers and therapists, but we developed them further and extended the workshops to include family members. So this first image is one that was made by a grandmother and her grandson on one of my workshops. And in the handout, I've included more animal templates to show different pictures that you can copy, and also to create puppets that can be held with a tube behind them. Finger puppets, there are many designs of finger puppets, so these are very simple ones, but just to demonstrate that fingers can be pointing up or down, and then the hand can be moved as you like, but it doesn't have to be in one direction. We also made mini theatres plus characters for stories out of recycled material. And in the first image you can see there's a dog along with the people, and the teacher who made that said there's always a dog in the playground or in the school playground, so she had included a dog. And the other image is of characters going through the forest. Moving puppets in different directions can also help children understand abstract concepts. For example, up and down, left or right, in front, behind. As a physiotherapist, I worked with the children in hospitals in Scotland, and when I was in Romania, I was invited to 2 hospital schools to provide workshops for the staff and also for children who were hospitalized. So this is why I'm including this information. Use of puppets in hospitals. Values of puppets that are relevant to hospitalized children, and there's a reference to a UK website. To incorporate transcurricular activities in education relevant for hospitalized pupils and their diverse needs. To provide education, distraction and entertainment with new activities. To alleviate boredom and help reduce pain. To help children express questions. Puppets can be used to help children and parents cope with stress, making characters to express their feelings and emotions about themselves and other people. To give a child a new skill, develop their confidence, self-esteem and have fun. And adults can have fun too. Puppets can help parents overcome shyness and let them play along with their child. It can be a very long day in hospital for children and parents together, so puppets can be a useful thing to play with. And therapists and parents can use puppets to explain about health treatments and medical procedures. These children were in a psychiatric part of a hospital I was working with in the hospital school, and the staff there invited the children to join us on a workshop. I showed them how to make cone-shaped puppets from circles, and the boy in the second picture the first picture, is using a red pen because it was December and he wanted to make a Santa Claus. Some of the other children made mice, and as you can see from the 2 bottom pictures, although the basic design was the same, they each created their own character and then they played together. Moving on from puppets, another activity I have done with students and therapists is ways to create a story sequence where there's interaction with the children, where they're participating. And with these students, we discussed the height of the images for children to have access. So it's a washing line just tied on some chairs with clothes pegs. And then they created a story where with the clothes pegs they could move the parts of the story around so that the sequence wasn't always the same, but it showed how you start from left to right and add parts of the story. The next part of this talk is about paper engineering and paper engineering techniques. It's a fun, hands-on activity, folding and cutting paper or card, and more techniques are in the handout. Using and making pop-up cards and books to encourage the creative process for reading, writing, and the pleasure of stories. Pop-up cards and books are tactile objects to appreciate, share, and interact with, which I'm going to show you. This is the same group of students making pop-up cards from my workshops. Pop-up cards can be used to show the sequence of a story. The main character is a frog. The frog has a mouth. That's the element of pop-up. And they took turns to read their part of the story. As you can see, they're having fun, which is all part of storytelling. And indicating who's next. And the story has a happy ending. Very important in children's stories. The middle may be an exciting or scary part or a mystery or fun, but stories have a happy ending. Now, some reasons for books with movable parts. A study compared the language used by children with language impairment while looking at a regular storybook versus a storybook with manipulatives. And they found that the children used longer sentences and asked more questions during the book with manipulatives. The author suggested that the storybook with manipulatives encouraged the children to use longer sentences because the children were more engaged and interested in the book. In addition, they thought that giving the child opportunities to get involved in the book reading by unfolding pages and lifting flaps may have given the child a feeling of greater control in the book reading. And now for some examples from my workshops. This teacher in the top corner had been on several of my workshops, including the puppet making one, and also on the paper engineering techniques. She sent me photographs of a project that she did afterwards, where she invited the parents of her children to come to the library for some workshops regarding books. The children and parents discussed the story after she had read the story. And they discussed other stories too. And then they got together and they started making box pop-ups and adding characters for stories. Box pop-up is one of the simplest ones to make, but also very effective to give the element of surprise when you open pages of a book. And that's to show the pleasure of making their own stories that the children had, and the parents too. Another design that I have developed from there is box puppet for a castle, because castles are a popular topic for stories. I know when I've been in Italy they talk about castles and romance, but castles can also be a fortification, somewhere for people to feel safe inside. And there are so many stories related to castles that it can be a start for a story. Children can learn to develop their own stories, but they can also be provided by the beginning and then complete their stories. I added here, to let you see, a prop, which is a small Playmobil character of a prince. And I opened the door of the castle so that that can be a use of question words related to the story. Question words of who, when it's a prince, why was he there, what was he doing, where was he, when and how. And all of these question words can be incorporated into stories to encourage children to develop their literacy skills. Also making a connection between a tangible object, a paper castle, and an on-screen image related to castles. Now a different version of pop-ups. This is one of the simplest ones where you just have a flap covering part of the story, and it's the start of a personalised story with a surprise under the flap. The surprise being the story's focused on her little sister, who just happened to be two of my grandchildren. But it's the start of a personalised story which they can then discuss using all of the question words and develop it further. Another element of surprise is by having a cause and effect using a moving tab. And I've chosen this because this is where the teacher is telling the story, and the expression on her face is also indicating that there's the anticipation of what you're going to see and then the surprise element of seeing it. Tabs can be moved up and down, not just side to side, and again the surprise element of the ladybird is coming up to the flower. When you're designing tabs and books and pages, you can think about whether what the child can see, so whether it needs to be a white tab to pull or a black tab to pull, etc. It all very much depends on what's required by yourselves and the children you were involved with. And making a book with tabs to pull, the story can have written words or blank pages to add the story. Paper-engineered children's books also have the potential to develop other non-literacy skills. Interest in these books can stimulate imagination and creativity. The ability to handle books with care helps to develop general motor skills. And for my final slide, I'm again showing one of my grandchildren. This is a child creating a story with a movable train with minimal help from an adult. She was really interested in a story that I made and told with her, which was a train with a cat going on a journey on the train, and she wanted one for herself. So we cut out a larger version of the train and she used her crayons to colour it in. And then she added the cat, and I added a tab to pull, and she then had what she wanted, which was her own version of the start of the story, which we could then expand on. So my contact details are dotfraser2@gmail.com. If you would like to contact me about any of the information I've shared here or things that you're doing yourselves, I would be delighted to hear from you. Thank you very much.